All right, there we go. Okay, well, this is our last session. Don't be so sad. But hopefully it'll be fun. We are going to be trying to create a GIF or a GIF, however you want to say it, but I'm going to call it a GIF today. So we are starting with week 5. This was the end of week 4. This is where we ended up. This craziness. So there's a few ways that we can go about creating a GIF. So I'm going to do a few different, I mean, it's the same process, but the point behind it. And it's not going to look like a beautiful video. That's really what Premiere does. So this is just like for simple animation within Photoshop. So first, in my layers palette, I'm going to go ahead and click on this little line hamburger and find delete hidden layers. Just all the layers that are not showing right now, we're going to go ahead and delete just to clean it up. And then I'm going to take this whole layer palette, select all, Control Command Group, so that it's all in one group so we can keep track of it better. Name it week 5. All right, so from here, we're going to go to our files. In your files, if you found them, we're going to grab start week 1, 2, 3, 4. Basically the process of where we've been the last 5 weeks. Drag them straight onto my artboard. And then in my layers palette, I'm going to reorder them so they're in order. All right. So now we've got start week 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is where we started from and where we ended up at was here. Quite weird. So we want to just show a progression, a simple progression of that. So how we create a GIF is in your window menu bar, we're going to find timeline. That's going to populate this frame placed down at the bottom. And in the create frame, we're just going to click on create frame animation. And when you do that, it automatically takes everything that is visible and puts it in that frame. Since these are all on top of each other, that's why we only see one to start. That's how we want that. So how we get a new frame is there's a plus sign at the bottom of the timeline toolbar palette. And when we click on, make sure we have this selected, of course it automatically selects because it's the only one in there. Just hit 1 or duplicate, it looks the same. But when this one is selected, now we can change. Just make sure that that's on your layers palette, that's the only one that's visible. So with the eyeball indicates the layer visibility. So now we can see on frame 1 and frame 2. So now we're going to be on frame 2. Go ahead and duplicate, come over here and reveal. We're going to do that process until we reveal all 5 layers, or 6, I guess. And 4. And we're going to just leave the last one layered for now. It's okay. But these are all just JPEGs from our previous weeks of where we ended each week. So that's all that those files are. Okay, so now in our timeline, we see we have all these different progressions. So you'll notice the 0 second on the bottom of each one of these. So when I click on the first one and I hit this play button, it's going to go through them really, really fast. And it'll loop it. Right now it's set for forever. Go ahead and stop that so we don't throw up. Then there's 3 times or once or you can create other. And what that means is how many times you want it to restart and loop. 3 times, once, 9 times, or for a lifetime. So another thing is if we select all of these by holding shift down, and then we just click and we change the time to half a second, it'll slow things down just a bit. And we can obviously change it to stay on there for a whole second. So it's just a longer time for each frame. And then the next thing, so that's like a very simple animation to, I guess, an image if you wanted a GIF saved. So how we would go about saving that would be File, Export, Save Web, Legacy. You always want to make sure that you hit this legacy. And up here, we want to find GIF. And I always put it on the 256 colors with the dither. I just leave everything as it's set in here. Yeah, diffusion. Settings are a little tricky sometimes, but just make sure it's the 256 colors and it's on GIF. So when we hit save, this is a very large image, just the size of it. So it takes a little bit. Let's just put it on my desktop for right now. And then when I go back to desktop, now we can see I'm not even touching anything. It's just going, it's playing by itself. So that is a file that we've created. You can see it right here. That is a very, very simple GIF. Now, I'm going to add a few things in here to make it a little less boring, or a little, just not so that it's a stark transition. And like PowerPoint, the transitions, they've got a lot of different options. Here, not a whole lot of options when it comes to just changing out from one frame to the other. So this icon that was near the duplication plus sign, this is called a tween. What that does, I'll go ahead and click it, and we want to keep all of the parameters checked in all layers. The frames to add, so it's saying it's going to add 5 frames after this first frame. So when I do that, we can look down here and we see the slow opacity changing and integrating into the new image. So Photoshop does that automatically. It knows tweening, so it says, okay, from frame 1 to really frame 2, we're going to have 5 frames that slowly transition into that. So now I'll show you. It's on 1 second, so it's going to be kind of slow. But I'll speed that up just on at least these. And I'll show you. Sometimes it takes a little bit to get it loaded. That's still kind of fast. But this is just to give you an idea. Now, I'm going to go ahead and delete, and make sure whenever you want to delete any of these frames that you don't use your keyboard, because anything you have selected over in the layers palette and you use your keyboard deletes the layer. So I'm going to undo that, and I'm going to make sure I always hit the trash can inside of the frame, the timeline frame. So before I go any further, I'm going to add a new layer all the way to the bottom under all of my layers and just have it to be black. And you won't be able to see it, but whenever we do the tween this time, now it won't be kind of the see-through. It's not as, I don't know, the transparency is better when there's a solid color at the behind it instead of no background at all. I don't know if that's visible at this point because it's so fast. But you can also create more frames instead of just 5. So we'll bump it up to 20. So it creates 20 frames that slowly transition. And I'll leave it on 0 seconds. So it's still going to go fast, but it allows for a smoother transition from one frame to the other rather than the stark changes that you see at the end. And so the same process for your main slides. So we've got 1, and then we've got 20 slides in there, and we find 21, actually it's 22, and we're gonna hit this same tween button. You can still leave it at 20, just gonna say okay, and it's gonna do the same process to the next slide. So I'm just going to continue this throughout all of our slides, which is going to give us a lot of frames, but it allows the more frames you have, and I wouldn't quite go to 100, but the more frames, the better transitions you're going to have rather than some stark changes. And I'm not going to put it on the last slide. I'm going to change the last slide to stay on there for like 5 seconds, and I'll leave these at 0 so we can see. I'll start it over and I'll hit play. So it's slowly transitioning and showing us where we've been this past few weeks. And so it slows down just because sometimes it takes a little bit to render the first round because it's such a big file and there's so many frames in there. So it should get a little smoother as Photoshop kind of renders it all out. So that's why I don't like to use too many frames in there, but just enough to make it pretty smooth transition. So, and the same would go with the file saving. If you liked this version, File, Export, Save for Legacy, or Save for Web Legacy. And then we can go ahead, and because it's large, it takes a little bit. So I'll show you after this speeds up, I'll show you how to change your image size to make it a smaller file so that we don't have to wait so long for such a big file to render.
You know, Danny, one of the things you could check on here is, you see those checkerboards, you know, that are appearing in the background there for you?
Yeah.
If you go into Photoshop Preferences and go to Transparency and Gamut, you can turn those off. And let's see, down Transparency and Gamut, about halfway right there. And where it says Grid Size, just drop that down and tell it none. There you go. And then click OK. And now those I've not tried it in the animation area, but that should make them where those go away. That did it.
Awesome. Thank you, Steve. I've been wondering that. That's why I put this black background on it, and sometimes it works when I do different things with creating the file, and other times it doesn't. So that's really awesome. Thank you. All right, so I didn't save this one. I just canceled that. So we're going to change the size. So whenever we are right about to save, we're going to go into Image, Image Size, or Shift Command I. This brings up, it's going to scale and link. So if you change one, it'll change the width, changes the height. So we can see that this is resolution 240. Which for web-based purposes, we want 96 at the highest or 72. So we'll just say 72. Automatically will change your width down. So whenever I click OK, it's going to scale it down. So it was a pretty large file. Now it's smaller. And that's 100%. So it's kind of tiny, but I'll show you the difference in the rendering. So we export. Save for legacy. Leave that. It's already on GIF. And we'll just save over the one we just did. So we can see that that saved a lot quicker. And then when we go to our desktop, this file is still pretty large as it's 9 megs. So you can continue to play with the size because this is fairly large for online, any kind of web. So we can even make the pixels, if you want to work in inches, maybe down to 3 inches. It is small, especially when there's a lot going on inside of the artboard, so you can't even see that. But when we save that, it will look a little bit larger. Just do this one more time and then we'll move on. Replace. But that's key whenever you're having, oh cool, it didn't, okay, there it went. 1.5, so it knocked it down quite a bit, but you can see that it's very blurry. And whenever your resolution and you make it microscopic, it's going to be small. Now this is just a preview on my computer. This is almost its exact size. So whenever you're creating something that has text in it, it gets very hard to read. But for some ads that just have a flipping name on it, like for sale or something like that, that's fairly large, and they just want it to move just like that, that's one of an option or an example that we could use. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my image size, back to regular, so we can all see this. All right, so this was just a very simple showing you how to create a GIF with multiple layers and very simple. So now I'm going to delete the new layers that we pulled in, and I'm just going to work off of layer 5 with all the layers in it. And I'm going to come down here and just delete all of my frames so I can start over. All right, so now that we have just week 5 in here, we're going to work off that, and we're going to actually move T-Rex around within the frame. And some troubles that I ran into, and I was asking Steve, why is this happening, was whenever you want to just move an object around. So I'm just gonna like move, well, I have to start with what I want to start with, duplicate it, and then I'm going to move it within my frame. And you can see, 1, it stays, 2, it moves. So when I duplicate it again and I rotate it, you would think it would just stay on frame 3, but anything that you rotate for some weird reason changes all of your frames, as if you were changing the original artboard. So that was very, very annoying. So then the key to changing and rotating is actually duplicating your layer palette over here. So since we don't have multiple, I mean, we have multiple layers, but we all want that to move together, we're going to do a lot of duplication. So we've got our main frame, we're going to duplicate here, and we're going to duplicate here. I'm not going to keep labeling these for the sake of time, but it's just going to say copy, copy 1, copy 2, copy 3, copy 4, blah, blah, blah. But we should be able to keep up with it. So on frame 2, I don't want this top one to show up. I just want to work inside of week 5 copy, all these layers. And I can come down here. Now T-Rex, we're going to hide the cherry donut and the grabbers because he's already eaten it. We've moved on. We're going to take T-Rex, slightly move him, Command T to flip him as if he's walking, and we need his little tail back. So I'm going to delete the layer mask so I have all of T-Rex, and we can get rid of his second tail because now he just needs his one. So we look at frame number 1, it stayed the same. Frame number 2, we got to do all kinds of stuff. But you have to make sure that you duplicate and duplicate and unhide the layer above so that frame 3 is over here, you're on 3, and you're on your 3rd layer here. Any kind of changes, just make sure you duplicate and you work off of a new layer duplication. So we're going to take T-Rex, we're going to move him again and make him as if he's getting closer to us and we're scared. I'm going to flip him one more time. Put him right there in the bushes. So we've got eating the donut, finished, moving. Okay, keep doing the same process and tweaking each group with something different, as if you're telling the story that T-Rex is moving throughout the frame. Right now we haven't touched the background, but we could turn off specific layers. You could delete them. Whatever you wanted to change within the frame. Now we want to hide T-Rex, as if we're terrified we don't know where he is. So we can pull him out of the frame or just hide him. And our background, we don't need the explosion really anymore. I'm going to tone this puppy down. It's less chaotic. So I'm just going to take the opacity down so that it's not super stark change, but it's still enough. And I'm going to hide one of those layers, and maybe that. There's that girl again. I should have taken her out from the very beginning. So I don't really want her in this, so I'm going to find my rock layer. Which, at this point, there's so many layers, it might take a second. I'm going to delete the layers I don't need. They're still in those other ones. Sometimes I have to make sure because I just never trust it. Okay. There's the rock. So I'm just going to slide the rock over so we don't have to worry about her. So now I'm ready to continue. So I'm going to add another layer, duplicate a layer, hide, work off this one. Now, you'll notice.
Could you show how you brought up?
Go ahead.
Could you show how you brought up the timeline again?
Sure. If you're on your window toolbar up here, at the very near the bottom, you'll see timeline. And mine is, so I just turned it off. So if you find it again, window, timeline, it puts it down there, but I'll show you with a new, as if you're starting from brand new, it's going to pull up this create frame animation. And that's what we would want to click to start working within the timeline. Now it also has create video timeline, and we're just not worrying with a video right now. So we're just doing create frame animation. And that's where we can come over here and work frame by frame. So from this palette, we are going to find our files. And in there,
can you show how you're duplicating on your panel, on your layers panel? How are you duplicating those? Are you pushing like Alt something and bringing it down and duplicating, or how are you doing that?
Yes, if you will hold down your Alt or Option key and just drag right under, it'll duplicate the whole layer.
Okay.
So, yeah. Okay, so inside we see T-Rex and baby T-Rex. So when I pull it in straight on my artboard, we notice there's a big white background. Now we can take this out multiple ways, or we can do it like we did our grabber. And that's what I want to do, is to pull it into the Photoshop app so it opens up in its new tab. I'm going to click the lock button. It's going to populate in quick actions, which you have to have your properties, which we can find it under Windows. Make sure properties is open, this pane, and it will give you a quick action. If your layers palette, sometimes it hides it. So you'll want to look for quick actions, remove background. It automatically will put a mask on it. And then we can drag our T-Rex and baby dinosaur over into our layer palette of the one we are working on and scale it to where we want it. He's going to reveal, so we want him to peek through. And you'll notice whenever I added this, I want to make sure it's inside of the layer that I'm working on. So we can see in layer 4, or frame 4, I'm sorry, you don't see the dinosaur. It hasn't been added until we are in this layer, week 5, copy 4. So whenever we duplicate this, and we duplicate by Option drag or Alt drag, turn off, open this one, and let's say that we want them to get a little bit bigger. And then we'll slightly change the backgrounds out and allow just for slight changes here and there to happen. I'll slowly take the opacity down on this one so it's starting to reveal a different background.
So what you're doing is you're creating a group for each slide that you want down on the screen, right?
Yes. And you can work within the group, within the layered palette that already has all of your layers set. So you're still, it's as if you're still working on your composition, but you have your original, you have your next copy down is like a slight change, slight change, slight change. Because if we do too many changes on the original, the problem with the rotation and everything was that it changed from the beginning. So if we had everything changed from on the original copy, then it doesn't have any kind of effect of change throughout because it's changed everything from the beginning. So that's why it's really important to have multiple layers over here and doing a GIF like this.
It's like the old flip books when we used to draw the pictures, you know, and change something on each page and just let them flip. It's the same thing the groups are doing for you.
Exactly. Great explanation. Okay, so I'm gonna do one more. Duplicate, duplicate. And now we have a cute little T-Rex and a baby. As if it makes you want to know if there's a series 2 coming out. Maybe. All right, so then I take off my background. I kind of just want it to be a sweet little image. We've got a lot that we could delete in here, but sometimes I leave them so that I can come back and see if I want to re-add some things or just kind of work with what it would look like if they weren't there. And when you delete it, obviously you don't have that flexibility. And I'm going to come up here on the background layer and go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, or however you pronounce that. And it just blurs the background so that my focus is on these two cute little dinosaurs. And we've got a floating rock in the background. So we're going to take this drop shadow off of it and maybe set it on the ground. All right, so when I go back through, I'm noticing these two frames are very similar. One just has a dinosaur head in the bottom. So I want to go back to frame 5. And the cool thing is when you watch me click on the frames at the bottom, you'll notice the layer palette, the eyeball moves to whichever layer that frame deals with. So 1 moves down the ladder as you click on each one. So then you can say, okay, 5, I want to go into the layer and I want to change it up just slightly again so that it's not super familiar or the same. So it looks a little different from the ones around it. Okay, so here we have our transition, and I'll slow this down, but I'll show you kind of the differences. Very choppy. So again, to slow that down, to add a little smoother transition, we're going to hit the tween button. I'll just do 10 slides. And I'm going to, I know it's hard to be able to find which one, but it'll be the solid, the most clear solid, because the one right before it you can see is slight opacity. Or you can count them out. But each main frame, I'm just going to add again the tweening process to give a smoother transition. For sure. Right there. Tween. Okay. Tween. And one more tween. And we'll leave the last one. You can either leave it longer before it starts over or just come over here and say once for the loop whenever you do the play button. So this is the start, and I'll let it play. And it's slowly moving. So we could speed this bad boy up so that it's not this slow. And as you check things out, after you've tweened, which is what we just did, and you want to go back and tweak something inside of your layers, is when things could be really thrown off, because it's a tween is working within 2 different layers, and so it's already kind of processed. So you want to make sure you have everything set before you hit the tween. Otherwise, you're going to have to probably delete the tween from one layer to the next and then retween that after you've tweaked it, which is doable. It's just kind of makes a longer process. So I'm going to speed these up a bit all the way to the last. And you can highlight and you can click on any of them, and we'll just change it to no delay and see what it looks like fast.
You know, Danny, one of the things they could do is once they get the initial slides set up before the tweens are there, they could go into history and take a snapshot. And then they could return to that snapshot at any time if they needed to change their tweens.
Yes. So this is what he was saying. So we see, I don't know if it says, yeah, see all the ones that say tween? And he's saying you could take a screenshot and then try to figure out which layers are on, which layers not, to get it back to a specific way, and then go ahead and change the frame. Is that right, Steve?
Yeah, see the little camera at the bottom of right below your cursor there? If you click that camera right there, it'll take a screenshot of where you are at this point, and then that screenshot will be put at the top of your history panel up there. And so if you took a screenshot at when you just had your 6 initial slides on there, yeah, see? And so you could go back to that place at any time. It makes it really easy to move back and forth.
Yeah, that's nice. And that way you won't lose, because in your history palette, if I go up here to layer visibility and I'll just duplicate this, it takes away everything that happened after that.
Right. It only saves a certain number of steps and then they start over again.
Yes.
That's why I take screenshots on. I use that little history camera quite often when I make different major steps that I know I may want to come back to. I'll take a little snapshot and I'll go, yeah, I'm going to go back to that step and start over again or whatever. It's a real helpful tool.
Yes, I've set my history repeat very high. And what that means is in your preferences, I'll have to figure out exactly. So I just went into general. And let me just fumble around for a second until I find exactly where that's located. Okay, in performance. So that's Photoshop, preferences, general. I'll go through the steps again. Photoshop, preferences. You can do general or just go to performance. And you're going to notice right here, history states. I've put it all the way to the max because I do so many different things throughout. So if I only had it at 9, I'm going to open up a new layer or a new document and I'll show you what that does. I'll just do like a ton of different things. So you're noticing there's my 9 and it's taken away the top one because all the brush tools will be gone in a second. So it's repeating. After 9, it starts deleting from the top and you lose your history and you can't go back any further. So whenever I go to my performance setting and I crank that history state up to the highest it'll go, which is 1000, now I can come in here and I can make all kinds of just changes.
And one thing to be aware of there is that if you only have, say, 8 gigs of RAM in your computer, that may seriously slow down your machine. So if you see your machine starting to slow down because of saving so many history states, just back it off a little bit and they'll be great.
Yes, because it does deal with the memory. I know this is a lot of technical stuff, but that is a great point, Steve, that it really does slow things down. So that's just an example. But I've backed up and I've made a change so I can't go forward again. So I would have to redo all the tweens. But another simple thing, I'll just come in here and I'll delete these. And it deleted these down here too because we deleted all the layers. But if we're just on this main layer and you just simply wanted to change the background color, I mean, we could, for instance, I'm going to go ahead and do an adjustment layer and put on black and white. Well, not on that one because I forgot to duplicate it here. So what I'm going to do over here, duplicate it and work on that background layer. And I'm going fast. The black and white that I just added. And it's not working. Let me just add a color filter so that we can see the change. So there's like more of a blue tone in this one. Delete this black and white mask. Or you can put it at the very top. So if all I'm going to do is change the background, I'm going to put all of these other layers in a group inside of week 5. So I've got all my layers and then I have the background layers separated so that I can move that around within just backgrounds. And I'll show you. So I'm going to duplicate that again. Come over here and duplicate week 5. I'm in my background layer and I'm going to come in and work just on the color. So if I click on my photo filter, populate some properties, I'm going to change my color. Trying to get it drastic, so purple. I'm going to duplicate, well, I'm going to duplicate over here first. Duplicate here. Just work off this one. I'm going to change that to, we'll do yellow now. And you can change here some of the different filters. We can go in here. I'm just trying to drastically change the color. So maybe it's a dark blue, or we can click on color and make it even more dark or orange. But the photo filter, is only filtering on top of the background layers. So whenever we are over here, we see a slight change in the backgrounds. So that's another way you can change these to half a second. Another way a GIF can happen is if you wanted this image just to have a background change. I know sometimes on the holidays, people have snow falling, and that's the way that you would create snow too, is you just move the snow down frame by frame, layer by layer, and that's how you get that snow falling effect. So basically that in a nutshell is a GIF, how to create a GIF. And so I'm going to use the rest of our time for questions and throughout all of the series or even today of just how everybody did you enjoy it, what was hard, how can this be better. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen so we can all look at each other. And please, if you have questions, let me know. Try to find our chat. But you can just scream it out. Awesome sauce. Yeah. I like that.
If you wanted to change the color of an object, but only a portion of it, how would you do that? So like, if you had the T-Rex and you want to keep the whole thing, but change like only one of the arms to be purple, how would you go about that?
All right. So let me start in here. Whoa, where'd you go? I'm going to delete these and blow this thing up. So we're going to start over basically. All right, so week 5, start there, duplicate, work just on here. I'm going to condense some of these. All right, so we find our T-Rex layer. And one way about going about this is we can add a layer right above him that we can paint on, or let me get a better brush, just a regular brush. I'm gonna click on, so I'm on the paintbrush, I'm on a new layer, I'm gonna click, I think you said purple. All right, so if this is an arm and we just wanted that purple, we can come into our layer palette, we can use our blending mode and try multiple options to see which one kind of fades in. And that's on top. So if that's our purple arm and we create a new layer, we can come back in. We can color another arm. You can use this same layer to color on. And see how I've got it on the outside? That's where I can go in and add a clipping mask to this layer and use my erase tool. Come in and clean that up. Or we can do a clipping mask of this purple. So let me back up and I'll do the or slower. Okay, so we've got our purple arms. And you'll notice we've got this stuff on the outside. So instead of creating a mask and deleting, I'm going to hold down Option in between the two layers, and it's going to clip inside. So anything that's clipped inside T-Rex stays in T-Rex. I can move this all around. He could have just a purple head. And you can even put a new layer and color the whole thing purple. So I'll do purple. I'm gonna get my paint bucket, make sure it's purple. I'm just gonna click. So now it looks like an underwater scene. But when I do the clipping mask, T-Rex is purple. The difference is on this one, we used a blending mode, soft light, for just his arms. I'll delete that. And on this full on purple, we'll go and we will go through So now T-Rex can be just crazy. And the blending filters, they kind of have a mind of their own. So you go through them to see which one best represents what you're trying to do. And you can also slightly take down the opacity if you want. Basically, it will look like one of the blending modes doing that as well. But that's an option. Now we've got purple T-Rex, and he's only purple in that frame. And his arm's still purple because we have that layer left inside of here that's here. We want it off. Now it's just T-Rex, and then he turns Oompa Loompa. So does that answer your question? I forgot who asked.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay, cool. Are there any other questions or demo requests? From the peanut gallery. All right. Well, I'm here to help moving forward, but I really appreciate you all hanging with me and going through this. This is kind of a new thing through Teams. I know it's a little weird at times, so thank you for being the guinea pig session group. And I'll stop recording shortly, but all of these will still be up on the recording. I don't want to close that. I think there's.
And I put a little message over on the side there, Danny, about going out to the workshop database where they register for classes and to click on the My Feedback. Because this was such a new class, we would love to have some ammunition. That is, if you like the class, some ammunition to show to our bosses, that, hey, this is a feasible way to teach a class. We didn't know how the class would turn out offering 5 consecutive classes in a row. Like I said in the message, we've never done this before. And we're hoping this was very helpful and it helped you build your confidence in Photoshop and this kind of thing. And we'd love to hear from you there on the feedback, as well as in the team channel, on the general channel right there. Just post some comments there. All the information you can give us, feedback on the class, whether negative or positive, will be really helpful to us as we move forward in planning more of these. And I just want to applaud Danny. I think she has just done a fantastic job teaching this class. This is one of her first classes to teach, and she has done amazing with it. I've been so proud of her.
Thank you all.
Yes, you've done a really good job, Danny. I appreciate it. You really helped me out a lot, even though I couldn't do a whole lot because I don't know what's going on with my Photoshop software. It'll work one day, and then the next day I go to open it up, and it just won't open anything up, won't do it. So I don't know what's going on. But this has really helped because I have fiddled and played with Photoshop for years, but I've just not really learned it. And I've been scared to mess with the layers because every time I start to do it, I'd mess something up. And so I just got frustrated, and I just went to Lightroom and basically used Photoshop to do cloning and healing and do just a few little tweaks, But now this may help for me to start doing some composites.
Awesome. I love that. Good.
So, Danny?
Yes.
Would you be able to show us how to remove like a person from a background?
Yes. Let's see if I can find some. I'll find some sources to work on, and then I'll share my screen.
You could use that image of the rock of Paladeo Park or whatever. It had the girl there. You could remove her.
Oh yeah, good idea, Steve. Okay, let me.
Yeah, I'm just full of it.
We've been wanting her gone from the very beginning, anyway.
That's right.
That is true. Okay, let me share. Okay,
There
gonna
she
take
is.
timeline off. So Just click it. Every time you leave timeline on and close Photoshop, it's going to open the new document until you turn it off. All right, so we've got this background and this girl that has been annoying the whole time. But, all right, so to get her off, we're going to unlock the background so we can work on it. And we're going to use a tool that we haven't used in this session, but we are now. It's called the clone stamp. It's my favorite tool. So it looks like a stamp. We're going to click on that, and I'm going to make it larger so we can see. So it's this big, and if you hold down Option or Alt, it gives you this different look, this icon that shows up. That means it's going to stamp wherever you are and click. It's going, so I've clicked right here. So anywhere I go on my palette, my mouse, if you'll notice, the plus sign is in the sky. That's where the stamp was, and I'm moving, but I'm painting on elsewhere. So that's basically what the stamp tool does. So with the stamp tool, I like to use the soft edges. So I take the hardness down to 0, and I'm going to stamp really close to her, the rock. I want it far enough away so that when I move around, I don't reappear her. And it's good to just, as if the rock continues to go. And then when you get it way out on the side and it looks weird, you stamp over the trees, you bring them back in. Also, you can stamp right on the edge to get that hard edge, kind of put that back. Now you notice the duplication there, it looks kind of weird. So I'm going to rewind a little bit and zoom in, make my eraser smaller, stamp, hover over her, and wherever that plus sign is what it's going to paint. So if I paint over here, she's going to appear over here because I'm basically painting her. So I'm going to just, all I'm doing is pulling my mouse, and it's going to pull that rock. So we can come over here and stamp this darker rock. And see how I'm really, now I'm in the sky. So that's where you've got to be really careful and use smaller brushes and areas, is to paint. Always watch where your cursor is, and you can just continue to re-stamp. And this works with the restamp when, like, from back here, you don't see all those smudges. Problem is when I'm stamping, you can kind of see I've just like repainted over it. I moved the whole cap rock over by painting. But it can get really smudgy if you're not careful. So I just like to go in with a very precise stamp and work not too far, because I want to maintain the same look of the background everywhere I'm at. So we've got to get the white part in right here on her. We've got to get this section that she's standing on has got to look like that. So if I stamp and pull, you can restamp as you move around to grab different parts of the rock. So I'm over here stamping, and it's just gonna paint, and then it's gonna get white, which is good because that's where the white is. And you just paint her on or away, and then I'm gonna come in here, stamp with the white, and I'm gonna try to find an edge to paint with, back and forth. It's a tedious process.
How are you moving the plus sign?
The plus sign is moving on its own. So whenever I hold Option or Alt down and click, my mouse has stamped the sky.
It anchors it in that place where you click.
Yes, thank you, Steve. So now I'm going to drag over here, but whenever I start painting, whenever I hold my mouse down, that plus sign appears because I painted over, or I stamped over there.
Okay.
So
Hey, Danny, just for the fun of it, try go back to the beginning and see what content-aware fill would do with that. There's a lot of stuff in that picture, but I'm just curious. It's under the magic wand over there. And click and hold and no, I'm wrong. It's the Band-Aid. Come down, up.
Oh, right
there. Right there. Click and hold and go. Let's try. Let's try the patch. No, that's not what we want to do. I tell you what, get the lasso tool and just draw a lasso around her.
Regular lasso.
Yeah, just a kind of a soft. Yeah, there you go. Now go up to, is it under edit? I think maybe content aware fill. There it is. About halfway down. There you go. Content aware, not scale fill. There you go. Click that and then go over there and click OK. And it did a pretty good job.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. My Zoom is not fast. Interesting.
Used to, you could do when you use the content aware, you could click Alt and Delete. Now it won't work. Have they changed that?
They changed the way content aware fill works, and now it pulls up a supplemental screen that actually gives you a little more control over the way content aware fill works. You may have noticed a minute ago when Danny first did the content aware, there was a secondary screen came up, it turned all green. It showed you where it was going to pull from. So it gives you some more control is what it does.
Oh,
yeah, watch this. She's going to do it again. Watch. See the secondary screen?
Like I say, you could do, was it Control, Alt, and Delete, and it would come up. But yeah, and I tried to do it, and it wouldn't work. So
yeah, they've changed that now, and the reason they changed it was to give us more control as to where it's. So what you're seeing in the green area or whatever the colored area there, those are the areas it's going to pull data from as it tries to fill that spot in. So it actually gives you more control over the content aware in order to be able to do that.
Oh, okay, cool, thanks.
It's a great tool for cleaning up pictures and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's like magic. Rock on. See you later, girl. You're out of our picture.
I have a question.
Yes.
I am trying, when I try to use the stamp, I get an error message saying that I could not use the clone stamp because the area to be done has not been defined.
Okay, so let me see here. I think that's because I'm going to just erase the background. All right, so we're on our background layer. It's erased. I'm coming over to my stamp. Okay, not happening. I've gotten that before.
Usually when that happens is when you haven't held down the alternate key and selected a point that it's going to clone from.
Okay, so if I'm just on stamp and I click it,
is
this what you get?
I see.
Yeah.
So you have to be sure and hold down that alternate key and tell it where you want to copy from. Now, another little trick that I do when I'm clone stamping is that I will create, and Danny, you could do this. Go ahead and create a new empty layer. Okay. Just down there at the bottom by the trash can. Yeah. And now what I do is go up to the property bar up there, right under the word Adobe Photoshop 2021, where it says current layer, up at the very center of the screen up there. Yep, and click that down and tell it all layers. There you go, or current and below, whichever one. Now, if you do your cloning from here, the cloning will actually take place on that empty layer, so that if you need to make any corrections later, you can go in there and just correct that one little area instead of having to correct your whole image.
I like that. I feel like I'm learning a lot right now.
I hate to ask you this. Can you say that again?
Yeah, whenever you're going to use the clone stamp, just go down and create a new empty layer. And then make sure the clone stamp is selected over on the tools. Yeah. And then go up to the properties for that tool, which are across the top of the page. And depending on how you've used Photoshop, it'll either say current layer or current and below or all layers. And if you've only got a couple of layers, you could just say current and below, or you could choose all layers, whatever you wanted to do. And that way, what it's going to do, it'll sample from all the layers instead of just the current layer.
Yes.
So now now it's putting those corrections that you're making or the cloning that you're doing, it's adding them to that blank layer. So if Danny turns off that blank layer, you're going to see that all that goes away, but you've still got your original. That makes it kind of non-destructive editing, so that you're not ruining your whole picture in case you wanted to change your mind.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
In case we wanted her back in there for some weird reason. But we could also, so if you don't have, like if that becomes, just going to do like a new layer and say you got the stamp on, but you forget to do this, it's going to do nothing because you are sampling on this layer, you're cloning, but it's doing nothing because that layer is blank. So you've got to make sure that the current, below, or all layers is selected for that process to work. Okay, what else? This is fun stuff.
We need to have a Stump the Chump session and let people hit us up with questions. That would be fun.
Yeah. But, woo.
How would I whiten teeth?
So say that again?
How would I whiten teeth?
Okay.
Good one.
So we're inside of T-Rex. Let's get back to these teeth. All right. I'm not sure I've ever whitened teeth, but a lot of these will deal probably with the filters. Steve,
there's a lot of great ways to whiten teeth. What I normally do is I select the teeth, just using the quick select tool that's underneath right there where it says quick selection. I'll zoom in, select the teeth, and then I just desaturate them. And when you desaturate them, they lose the color, and so they're whiter. You have to be real careful whitening teeth, though, especially if you do them on people, because they'll look kind of weird if you're not careful with it.
All right.
So, and then copy that to a new layer, that selection.
Yep. That's cool looking.
And then desaturate that layer. Or just do an adjustment layer and
let's see.
Color balance would probably do it, or hue and saturation would do it.
Yeah.
And then just pull the saturation down. Oh, you got to clip it first. Ping. There you go. Now just pull your saturation down. You'll notice it takes the color away. And if
How did you get to hue and saturation?
It's under the half circle at the bottom. Those are our adjustment layers. And then you can do hue, saturation, color balance, brightness, contrast. Ew, why are his teeth that ugly? Okay, so we're going to delete that layer, the hue and saturation layer. We're going to make sure that the clipping of the brightness, contrast.
There you go.
Brighten up those pearly whites. Take the contrast down really high, and that's where Steve was saying it could look really weird on people like Ross on Friends, where it's just too much.
Yeah, that looks kind of nuclear.
Yeah, so you gotta find a balance. And with Photoshop, the tweaking is not extreme. So it doesn't take a lot of shifting around. Just kind of like I was showing you with the curves. We'll just curve it inside of just the teeth. Is the same way. It doesn't take much, but the second you get pretty drastic, weird things happen.
Yeah, with Photoshop, a little bit is a lot.
Yeah. Which makes it so cool, and you could spend hours doing it different ways, but that would be a way. So if you've got your person, you come in here with this quick selection tool, make sure your eraser is somewhat small, come in here and just select the teeth, and we'll create a new layer with just the teeth. Let me get on this one. So now that I'm on, we'll say this is a person, we've got teeth. We jump that layer to a new layer, or Command or Control J. So we're just working on those teeth. We find our adjustment layers. We'll do brightness contrast here. Now we need to make sure that we clip this so that it just works off of this layer. Otherwise, it's going to work off all the layers below it. We're just worried about those bottom teeth. So inside of, if you hold down Option, it'll show you that box with the arrow, or whenever you have added a layer adjustment, it opens up properties up here, and there's also this icon. If you click it, you'll notice that the arrow is saying I'm going to clip it inside of the, so the, oh gosh, adjustment layer has always got to be on top of the layer you're working on so that you can clip it inside there and it will just work within that layer. So inside with the properties, it just deals with the teeth.
And whatever you do, don't take a paintbrush and paint them white because you'll lose all the detail and that looks really weird.
Right. Kind of like how we painted his arm and then we went over here and we just added a clipping mask to that. Sometimes when you're working with fine details, and that's why I love the multiply tool. Because this would be like painting something. I just created a rectangle. But then if we come in and put this on T-Rex, he's still going to be solid purple until we find multiply or some of these other filters that kind of allow the purple to go through, but you still get all of the texture of him. So that's another way, but it's not really dealing with just the coloration of teeth, if that helps. But clipping masks are good when you're just dealing with parts of something and selecting that layer part out. So again, if we want on our, we've got to get on the cherry donut layer. We want this cherry donut to be chocolate. Where are you? I'm going to go in and select, and I just want the icing. So I'm going to hold down Option to deselect the parts that I don't want chocolate. And again, it's very sensitive, but it tries. All right, so I'm going to jump that layer and we can color overlay. We don't have to make a new layer, but I did. And then we're going to come in here when we hit color. Now we've got some chocolate.
Yummy.
Yummy. Yummy is right. Now I didn't clip it inside of there, but I can. And it kind of cleans up the edges. And you can make it a little bigger, smaller. Maybe it's a chocolate cherry donut. But it's keeping the shape. And remember, if we make anything larger with a clipping mask on it, then it's going to go with it. And this is clipped inside of an image that has a clipping mask. That's another way to change out and just work inside of layers. So hopefully that is helpful. I know it'd probably be helpful to use an image of a person versus just T-Rex.
And the clipping mask always has to be on top of the layer that you're working on?
Yes, so anything on top of, let's say,
they always clip down. They never clip up.
So anything it's like pouring, like a pitcher is pouring into a glass. Whatever you're going to do in that glass, just think of it like that. A clipping mask is pouring down into just that glass, and that glass is your layer, metaphorically speaking.
Okay.
So, okay, any other questions? I hope that y'all will post some of your images so I can see how fun you've had. Or if you haven't been doing your homework and you fail, I'm just kidding. Sorry, there's no prizes for the challenge, but it will be fun to see your challenge at any point. So,
Love to
all
see.
right. Well, y'all go to lunch and have a fabulous 4th of July weekend. And I hope we'll see you soon with a new workshop.
Yes, thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Bye,
Thank
everyone.
Have a happy holiday weekend.
You too. Be safe.